and welcome once again to Family Historian. My name is Stephen Conti. Tonight we're off to merry old England, and that means we are going to talk about English genealogy. Many people in our country are of English ancestry, and tonight we're going to find out how we can find our English ancestors. And joining me on tonight's show, I am very honored and very lucky to have as my guest a young man named Brent Belnap. Brent has been to England, where he has found many of his English ancestors. And tonight he is going to teach us how we too can find our English roots. And now let's welcome genealogist and writer Brent Belnap. Brent, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Stephen.
Brent, as I said in my intro, many Americans are of Anglo descent.
Yes.
And this is a large area of genealogy, so we'll try to talk about as much as we can in these 30 minutes. Brent, when an Anglo-American discovers his or her town or parish in England, what is the first record source they would use once they have identified the town in the Shire?
Right. Well, as you say, Stephen, once an American of English descent has identified his ancestor from England, it's important that he obtain a map, a very good map, and in particular a parish map, for example.
And we do have
England.
one right here.
We have one here, for example. Parishes are very important for English research because they are, in essence, the primary unit where somebody will begin his or her research.
Okay, what is the best definition of a shire?
A shire, there are approximately 40 of them in England. A shire is equivalent roughly to, let's say a county of a state here in the United States. A shire is a civil jurisdiction, but it's also broken up into different ecclesiastical jurisdictions called parishes.
Right, and we do have a wonderful map that you did bring with us to show our viewers what the shires look like and how many shires there are in England. And I have the map right here. We have to unfold this. Okay, this is a rather old map, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It's a reprint, I believe, of an 1830s map, and colored map of the shires or the counties of England and of Wales.
Right. And of course, Wales is another country altogether.
Yes, we won't be talking about that tonight. It's another country on the island of Great Britain.
Okay, and I have all of the shires of England on this map, this very colorful map. And if you could point to a few of these shires and name them. And
Sure. For example, a lot of Americans of English descent whose ancestors came to this country in Puritan times descend from people who came from Essex or Suffolk or Norfolk or from Kent or Sussex. A lot of Americans descending from English ancestors who came in the 19th century descend from some of the more industrialized cities of Birmingham, Liverpool, some of the Cotswolds areas, Leicestershire, for example.
And where are your ancestors from, Brent?
I mentioned some of the places where my ancestors are from because I descend from people who came to this country during both time periods. My own family of Belnap came from Hertfordshire and from Essex, just north of London. On my mother's side of the family, I have ancestry from Warwickshire, from Leicestershire, from Yorkshire, and other places.
Right. Okay, that's wonderful. So you're a real Englishman.
Both sides.
Great. Okay, that's why you're here tonight, representing the English people. I'll place this right here. Now we have a good close-up of one shire. This is Hertfordshire, and you can see what the shape of this shire is all about. And can you tell us something about this? Because this locates the parish, which really narrows it down.
This right here is a shire of England, one of the 40 plus, divided up into its individual parishes. You'll see that they vary in different sizes. In those places where there are cities, of course, there are more than one parish. There is more than one parish within each city. Most of the parishes cover rural areas, and for most of us of English descent, we will descend from people who came from the rural parts of England.
That's why we're here.
And that's why we're here.
Right.
And this particular map is important to a genealogist for several reasons. First of all, this map, if you can see it closely, mentions some of the dates in which individual parish registers began to be kept within those parishes.
So this is a very good source for the genealogist.
Yes, it is.
Because it gives him or her the date of when that parish was in existence.
Exactly.
I see. There is a very fine book that is a good companion to these maps that you have here. It's called A Genealogical Gazetteer of England. And this will list every parish in England.
Yes. This is an excellent book by a man, a professional English genealogist named Frank Smith, who's written many works on English research. This particular work tells you a lot about your individual parish, where your ancestors would have come from.
And it gives you the exact location.
Yes.
And of course, the
and
year.
where the records are found today.
So there is a lot there for the English researcher.
Yes, there
I
is.
would say more than any other nationality.
In fact, the Family History Library has filmed more parish registers and church records and civil records from England than from any other country.
Right, this is the Mormon Church.
Yes.
And they have done like about 90,000
95,000 microfilm reels, more than 65,000 microfiche, and within their library in Salt Lake City they have over 50,000 books on English genealogy.
Right, so for the Anglo-American, everything is right here, almost, or all of it.
Most of it is here. It's not necessary for one to go over to England to research his or her ancestors. One can begin right here at any branch genealogy library.
Although it's lovely to walk down the same street where your ancestor once
Of
walked.
course.
So this is the Genealogical Gazetteer of England, and Mr. Smith has written something else, a great English genealogist.
Yes.
Genealogical Research in England and Wales, and this is in 3 volumes.
Yes, this is a 3-volume work that basically goes through different historical time periods that would be important to Americans researching their ancestors. For example, between 1760 and 1820, that was the period of England's canal building, and that poses certain problems for somebody researching his or her ancestry, because perhaps their ancestors lived in one place, but they were married or were buried somewhere else, further on down that canal.
People moved around a lot.
People were moving around at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and this type of book tells someone what strategies to take to try to find his ancestor.
And we do have a map, because your ancestors were canal people, I believe.
Some of them were, yes.
Some were. And we have this map here showing the canals. In what shire is this?
This is in Leicestershire. This is the second type of a map that anyone wanting to do English research will need to obtain, and that's a topographical map. Any sort of map that will show not only the parishes and the ecclesiastical divisions of the country, but also the roads, the canals. It's important, for example, for one wanting to do research. I have ancestors who come from this little town right here called Countessthorpe, and yet there was a father who was from this little town here, a wife from over here, a child who was christened over here. It's important that one become familiar with the surrounding geography so that when it comes time to research parish registers, the person will be familiar with the names of the surrounding place that they will need to research.
Right. Now, these parish registers, are they kept on the local level? They are still in the churches, or have they been centralized in England?
There is no central repository, unfortunately, in England for any church records. And that does pose a problem. However, many of the records were microfilmed, have been microfilmed by the LDS Church. Oftentimes also, in fact, beginning in the year 1598, every parish was required to send a copy of the parish registers to the headquarters of the church. And these transcripts of the parish registers were sent in and were given the name of bishop's transcripts. Oftentimes, many of those have been microfilmed. But if someone wants to do a good job, they will check both the parish register, write directly to the parish where your ancestors came from, and then also see if, by chance, the bishop's transcripts have been microfilmed.
Right. Now, the parish register is the one that will take you back the furthest. Unless you're of the nobility or the royalty, you go back even further.
Yes.
In what year did they start keeping church records in England?
Actually, that's a very good point. England is very fortunate because beginning in the reign of Henry VIII in the year 1537, Henry VIII commanded that every parish keep a register of all christenings, marriages, and burials.
Of the common man.
Of the common man, of everyone. So in essence, England, more so than perhaps any other European country, has records of its common population going back 400 years.
So therefore it's very possible for the individual, the common person, to go back to those early 1500s.
Yes, it is. Although some of the parish registers didn't begin keeping track of the births, etc., right away, but over a period of time, eventually all of them did start keeping registers.
And we do have a copy right in my hand here of a parish register from the year 1776. Is that correct?
While America was having its revolution, my fourth great-grandmother, I believe, is right here.
And her
was
name?
Being christened was Sarah Spencer. It says Sarah Spencer, D meaning daughter of Henry Spencer, was christened on July 28th. This says here at the top, it's a copy of a register of Kilby in Leicestershire, AD 1776, a list of the christenings, marriages for that year there are none, and then burials, these individuals here, and it's signed by the vicar of the church.
And this would be a baptismal record?
And baptisms, marriages, and burials, all on that one little piece of paper.
On this one paper?
For that one parish.
Isn't that something? And this is your fourth
great-grandmother.
In 1776.
Yes.
And then you do get the names of your fifth great-grandparents who were, of course, her parents.
Here, unfortunately, in this parish register, it only lists her father. Oftentimes on the parish registers, however, it would list both parents.
I see.
At least the mother by her first name, never by her maiden name.
Right. I understand there's another thing that people should know in English genealogy about old style years and new style.
Yes.
Can you explain that to our viewers?
Right. Before 1752, and during the month of September, the calendar was changed throughout the British Empire. But before that time, the country of England used the old Julian calendar, which had been in existence, of course, since the time of Julius Caesar, after whom it had been named. The rest of Europe had switched over to the new Gregorian calendar named after Pope Gregory in the 1500s. But England didn't switch over until 1752. And in the month of September of 1752, both in America and in England and elsewhere in the British Empire, the calendar had 11 days cut out for that calendar to catch up with the old Julian calendar to catch up with the Gregorian calendar that everyone else was using.
So the researcher has to do some subtraction?
The researcher, yes. It poses a couple of problems. For example, the year before 1752 began on March 25th. That was New Year's Day.
I see.
And it wasn't January 1st until after the calendar change was made. And so oftentimes somebody researching records will see two dates. Somebody was born on February 23rd, 1749/50. By our calendar, that would be February 1750. But in the old system, it was deemed to still be part of the year 1749.
And this is unique to English genealogy?
The calendar change in the year 1752 is unique to English genealogy, but other European countries, people doing research in other European countries should be aware of the calendar change that did occur.
Very good point, very good point. Now, we've looked at the parish record. What is the next major jurisdiction that the English genealogist would use? What year are we talking about now?
In the year 1837. Well, let's step back just a little bit, Stephen.
Okay.
Between 1537 and 1837, the only records primarily in which someone will find his or her ancestors will be in the church records.
Right.
But beginning on July 1st, 1837, the government of England declared that everyone, no matter his or her religion, whether they were a member of the Church of England or not, should be registered according to civil registration. Beginning on that date, all births, marriages, and deaths were recorded on civil registration forms. And we have a couple of samples of them here.
So 1837, July 1st.
July 1st.
All right.
The next one.
And under whose reign was that? Was that...
Victoria.
Victoria, right.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the year she began.
Here's a good Victorian record. Okay.
Actually, this goes back just a little bit earlier. In the year 1813, parish registers were standardized and began to include more information. This particular parish register of a marriage happens to state that the marriage was solemnized between us, and then has the individuals signing their names. Here are the signatures of one of my great-great-great-grandparents here, and his wife, who didn't know how to sign her name and instead put an X.
So this is in 1813. I went ahead of myself.
Yes.
Okay, 1813 parish register. And in 1813, say it once more, this was the new form?
In 1813, instead of that simple form that we saw from 1776, that would just list the daughter of so-and-so that gave no information, In 1813, suddenly a whole new wealth of information opens up for the genealogist. It has the people signing their names. Who are their fathers? What was the maiden name of their mother?
You get more dimension
Much
on
more
the
dimension.
record. Okay. Now we have a civil record.
Yes.
Okay. This is a certified copy of an entry of birth, and this is a form that is given to you?
Yes. One can send away 4 civil registration forms from Somerset House in London. Indexes to all civil registrations have been microfilmed by the Family History Library, so it's not necessary for one to plow through a lot of paper, basically turn to an index, and then right away to Somerset House for the index, for the civil registration form from the index of the individual that you believe you're related to.
So this is the stationery that they would use at Somerset House? Is
Yes,
that?
it is. This is a certified copy of an entry of birth. Here it happens to list what the registration district is. Now, a registration district is different than a parish, Stephen. This is now a government jurisdiction within a shire.
I see.
And this particular entry of birth gives the date of birth, the sex, the names of the parents, even the occupation of the father.
Very informative. Very informative. We have another one here. If we can just go over this one. This is a marriage record from the civil registration. If you could just explain this record to our viewers.
Yes, this one is from Middlesex County. It is a certified entry of a marriage record. This one is dated in August of, I believe it's in the 1830s sometime, and it happens to show one of my great-great-great-grandfathers whose first wife had passed away. It shows him here as being a widower, having married another woman, Maria Martha Shelton, a widow. He was a carpenter. This was their residence. These are the parents of both of these individuals, who must have been very old when they were getting married for the second time, each one of them, showing how much further one can take his or her genealogy from one of these certificates.
Right. Now, in 1841, we're going ahead now. 1841, tell our viewers what took place in record keeping in England in the year 1841.
Okay. In the year 1841, England took its first census that for the genealogist has import. Prior to that time, England, of course, had taken censuses, and like the United States, it has a decennial census. But in 1841, it had the first census in which it mentioned individuals by name, and it listed occupations. This particular census form is from 1861, and it happens to show this same James Gale that we saw in the prior form, head of a household, gives his age, gives his occupation, and also gives his place of birth in Warminster, Wiltshire, England.
Excellent for the researcher.
Yes.
Excellent. Now, we're going back in time again. You brought photocopies of original wills from the 1600s, I believe. Now, we'll show this one right here.
Okay.
And what year are we talking about here, Brent?
This particular will dates from 1680. It is the will of a man named Daniel Belnap. He had signed his name here. You can
That
see
name
the
sounds
seal.
familiar to me. An ancestor of yours, Belnap.
Not, unfortunately, a direct line ancestor. He is a cousin of one of my direct line ancestors. But you'll notice one of the most interesting things here, Stephen, is the handwriting.
Yes.
Very, very difficult to read. It begins here, in the name of God, amen, Anno Domini, 20th day of, etc., etc., 1680. The script is very difficult to read, and unfortunately, a lot of probate records and wills have not been indexed. This actually represents perhaps the next level. Once somebody has researched parish records and civil records, one would then want to get into probate records.
And that's another show altogether.
Yes.
I see. I just want to interject something here, but family historian has never professed to be the last word in genealogy. These are shows that merely scratch the surface, but they are an introduction to this wonderful science of genealogy. And I'm hoping that tonight's show on English genealogy will get you going, all of my English viewers out there. And if you have any questions, you can write to my guest, Brent Belnap, or myself, Stephen Conti. But getting back to this is a probate record from the year
1680.
An actual will.
Yes. And for people who want to research their ancestry further back beyond parish registers, or if, for example, their parish didn't keep registers,
Right.
they're basically limited to probate records or to court records.
Or if they tie in with royalty, they can go all the way back.
And many Americans, surprisingly, do descend
Yes.
from William the Conqueror.
Yes, at 1066.
Yes.
And you said so yourself that England has experienced very few major invasions, so the records are still there.
Exactly. Americans who are researching their ancestry have something that I think perhaps others from other countries share too, but Americans are lucky for the fact that England was never successfully invaded after William the
Right.
Conqueror.
Right.
And because of its relatively stable system of government and its homogeneous population, the records have been preserved for a very, very
Yes.
long time.
And the LDS Church, which is the Mormon Church, has done a wonderful job in preserving these records, more than any other foreign country.
Yes.
90,000 reels of microfilm?
95,000 reels of microfilm.
95,000. I wish I was English. Well, I am an incurable Anglophile. I've been to England on many occasions, and I love it. There are many fine books on English genealogy, and we only have a few of them here, but they are very good. This is called In Search of Your British and Irish Roots by a very fine genealogist, Angus Baxter. Can you
Yes.
tell us something about this?
Mr. Baxter has actually written a lot of books on doing research for Americans who are of European descent. He's written books on Germany and France and elsewhere. This particular book is a very good book on British research, those individuals who are wanting to research their ancestors from all throughout the British Isles.
Right, okay, and that's called In Search of Your British and Irish Roots by Angus Baxter. And we have another book here called The Lives and Times of Our English Ancestors. I like that title.
This is an excellent book. It's also written by the same gentleman who wrote two of the other books that we've looked at already, Mr. Frank Smith. This book goes through the history of England and looks at the history from a genealogist's perspective, and basically describes the records that are available, the clothing, the lifestyle, the occupations, through each century up through the 1900s.
Very good. Now we have another one. This is a rather new one. I don't think either one of us know about this book, but it speaks for itself. It's called Tracing Your English Ancestors, and it's a very good, I would say, a good beginner's how-to book. Have you seen this before?
Not too much, but I'm sure it's excellent. It's printed in England, I notice, and I'm sure it's very good.
Right. And I also have another book here, which is not really genealogical. I call it a complementary source. You might find your village in here, your English village. It's called simply The English Village by Richard Muir. And there's nothing more idyllic than a lovely English village. When are you going back to England?
Sometime soon, I hope.
Because I know it never stops, does it?
No, genealogy continues to fascinate anyone who gets into it. It's one of the most wonderful hobbies in the world.
Well, you know, it's the third most popular hobby in our country. After stamps and coins comes genealogy. Before we close, Brent, can you just give us a brief review about what we've spoken about tonight, locating the name of that parish because records are on the local level? Can you just go over it very briefly for us and
Sure.
the sources that we have used here?
Sure. Once somebody has identified his or her immigrant ancestor, one needs to identify the location where the ancestor came from. Basically, one needs to know the parish or the town from which his or her ancestor came. And to do that, one needs a very good map of England. Now, for example, if somebody doesn't know where his ancestors came from, he can check the International Genealogical Index or other sources. There are other indexes that are accessible. But once you do have that location, get a very good map. Get a very good parish map, and then get a very good topographical map. Oftentimes in England, geography determined occupation, which determined family history, in essence. For example, if you grew up in the Cotswolds, you could have been a sheep herder. If you grew up in the north of England, you could have been a pottery maker. Those industries, when the Industrial Revolution hit England, the first country to undergo the Industrial Revolution in the world, those industries determined family history. People were pulled from the surrounding countryside to come into the cities as the cities began to grow. And so it's important to become familiar with the surrounding geography, the surrounding parishes, and then as one becomes familiar with those places, come to know the ecclesiastical and the civil and the probate jurisdictions so that you know which records to go to right away so that you save your time. Yes.
It all ties in. It's a wonderful, wonderful search, and you've been doing it for so long. And I understand that you are also a writer. You're writing your own biography right now.
Yes, I am.
And including some of your English ancestors in that, I'm sure.
I hope to include more of them. Right now I'm working on my own life story. I think just as many of us look to the past trying to find something out about our ancestors, we wish that somebody, and we wish that that someone before us had kept a good record. I believe that each one of us has the responsibility to leave something behind about ourselves.
So your descendants will have something to read about you. You can take them back even further.
Right.
Brent, this has been a wonderful interview tonight in this very short 30 minutes that we have here talking about England and English genealogy and the wonderful English records. And I hope that any of you out there who are doing this kind of research will learn a lot tonight about this wonderful area of research, English genealogy. And once again, I just want to show you the books. The Bible, I would call for the genealogist, would be Genealogical Research in England and Wales. This is a book that you recommend.
Yes, highly recommend. It's a 3-volume work and it should be found at most public libraries.
Okay. And on that note, we're going to wind it up. And thank you very much. And thank you, people out there. And remember, we are all descendants of ancient civilizations. Genealogy is your key to the history of your family. And so until next time, this is Stephen Conti wishing you the very best of luck in your research, and above all, happy ancestor hunting. Good night.